Hello and welcome to today's presentation. Today's presentation, as part of the Digi Leaders Innovation Week, is all about a digital product called MyNavy, an empowerment tool that is helping to transform the lived experience of people who work in the Royal Navy. So welcome to the presentation. Today's presentation was originally going to be brought to you by myself, David Chandler. I head up the Government and Defence Division within Great State, and one of our clients, Morgan Long, or Mogsy, who he likes to be known, who is a senior product owner for the MyNavy platform. But unfortunately, Mogsy couldn't make it today, so I'll be taking you through the presentation and the story that we have to tell you about MyNavy. So a bit about what we're going to cover today. In today's presentation, we'll give you an overview of MyNavy, the product, and the journey we've been on with it up until this point. MyNavy is a product that's helping to transform the lived experience of the Navy's people, as I mentioned, but also one that is helping to transform processes and ways of working within the Navy itself. All of this helps to bring efficiency to the organisation, but ultimately is making sure that people have the best experience possible within the service and are encouraged to stay as long as actually possible. We'll also share with you how we've managed to make the product a success, share some of our ways of working, and also share with you some of the lessons that we've learned along the way. Just to start the presentation, we wanted to give a bit of context into the Royal Navy and some of the people challenges that exist today. The Royal Navy is a large and complex organisation, as you'd imagine for a defence organisation. Founded many, many years ago, so steeped in a lot of heritage. We see a mix of world-leading and equipment technology that is used across the Navy, but at the same time a contrast because some of the ways of working are in need of transformation and are much more analogue. The organisation is complex, there's a workforce that is dispersed across the world, and also people who join the Navy, they're not signing up to a regular day job, they are signing up to a life choice. They're making a big long-term commitment when they decide to join the Royal Navy itself. Some of you might not be aware, so I just wanted to share as well that the Royal Marines do make up are part of the Royal Navy as well. So the Royal Marines are the elite amphibious force of the Royal Navy. So they're a fighting force that is optimised for rapid response, and are able to deal with different security threats and challenges as well. Something that a lot of people don't actually know. Also, the Royal Navy is much more than people know it for as well. It does a lot more than what most people are aware of. The Navy is there to help stabilise the seas. It keeps trade. This is the lifeblood of our economy, but also acts as a guardian and a diplomat. So doing things like humanitarian work for good, and also doing peacekeeping work. Many things that people aren't aware of that the Navy does. Just wanted to set some context as well around the people. So military recruitment is in a challenging space right now. We've seen that only become more and more difficult over the last few years. It's harder than ever. UK unemployment is at the lowest level it's been since the 70s. In the last 3 months, UK unemployment hit a fresh multi-decade low. So the number of vacancies remains near historic highs, with more job openings than ever before. There's also fierce competition in the jobs market within the public sector as well. People like the Department of Education are spending huge amounts of money, so are the Metropolitan Police, in terms of trying to attract people to join them. At the same time, we're dealing with the Gen Z audience, which has the sad distinction of being labelled as the loneliest generation. This has created a lot of uncertainty around their futures and what their careers might look like. So they've really been affected by that. So when we talk about the people we're bringing into the Navy, there's some wide challenges there that we have to deal with. At the same time, that there's a challenge also to retain talent within the Navy itself as well. What we've seen over recent years is the net outflow of people from the military is starting to increase. So less people are joining than are leaving. So we have this dual challenge where it's harder to recruit people than ever before, but also it's a harder challenge to make sure we retain that. So now in the next section, I wanted to talk a little bit about the journey that we've been on with it. What's really important to start with is MyNavy was born entirely out of research. So some large-scale research that took place with the purpose of understanding a bit more about why we were seeing increasing issues with retention within the Navy. When we did that research, there were 4 main key points that were identified. So we identified that personnel across the Navy were feeling undervalued, so they didn't really feel a sense of being appreciated by the service and that they were replaceable. They were uncertain about their future in the Royal Navy and that they felt like there was limited opportunities for growth. Personnel also didn't feel in control of their own lives, and they're frustrated by the Royal Navy's slow and analogue ways of working. And finally, the research showed us that personnel and their families had limited access of information to help them feel supported. Like I said, it's usually important that the product was actually founded in research, so addressing core user issues that we had identified. At the same time, it was also important that the MyNavy product was built into a wider transformation plan that the Navy was going on. So having that alignment to that wider plan was really important. And it also meant that there was a commitment there to develop the product. We developed it as an MVP initially. And it's key that work fits into a wider plan, so it's understood across the organisation. We work with many stakeholders, so the alignment across those major initiatives is really important to get the focus. 2 things that are really important just to pull out from this quote is in the wider plan is that empowerment is really important to the Navy. So encouraging the members of the service to focus on their own personal and professional development, and also giving them the tools to make that experience as possible. And that's really where MyNavy comes in. We found it was critically important to make sure that the product had a clear purpose and a clear proposition. This is something we worked on jointly together with the Navy as well. It has to be a collective ownership, really. The thing that's really important is to make sure that everyone's clear on what MyNavy is there to achieve. The empowerment for the Navy's people to improve their lived experience. Once we created this as our purpose, it was important to make sure that we shared that amongst the entire team that work on the product. If they're fully understanding what the product is there to do, it means that we can challenge each other, and when we're making decisions, we can link our work back to the purpose of what we're trying to achieve. So our purpose here is to create an app that's so useful it saves time every day, so empowering you can take control of your Navy experience, and so personalised you always feel valued. These are things that can constantly resonate amongst our team. As well as having that clear purpose, we developed 3 core pillars to MyNavy. These provide the guidance to the team to define the strategic priorities and also to deliver the features as well and the experience that our users are looking for. These are all things that we've tested with our users as well. So these are all based on research. When we came up with the core pillars, we then retested them to make sure that they resonated with our various user groups. And these are the characteristics that define the brand. They allow us to create the personas and how we look and how we talk to our users. Each pillar can be dialed up or down, so depending on the audience that we're talking to and the actual use of whatever it is we're developing. And they also allow for flexibility and creativity. So, of course, there is ways to maneuver around these, but we need to make sure we stay true to them. I'll just talk you through each of them one by one. The first of these is utility. So above everything else, we need to make sure that MyNavy remains useful. Speaking to users over and over again, this remains one of the most important things for them. We want to show how we can make a difference to their life. They're looking for efficiency. This means not always the most sexiest looking thing, but sometimes they want to go in, do something, and go again. So just taking away frustrations. This doesn't mean we need to be stripped back and plain. It just means we need to be completely trusted and we need to be relatable. The second of these is personalisation. So it's important to remember that everyone's career within the Navy is different, and that's why their experience with MyNavy should feel the same, should have the same sense of individuality. So each person needs to feel that it's their personal tool and it's relevant to them. They need to feel like they're valued on an individual level. Again, this goes back to that research that we found where people want to feel valued within the service. The third of those is about empowerment. Again, you remember this related back to the transformation plan, but it's important that everyone who uses MyNavy feels empowered by it. Ultimately, it is an empowerment tool, one that is designed to put the control in the user's hands. So we need to show them they can actually do that. We need to show them they can influence, inform, and impact their future careers, but giving them at the same time give themselves the feature to explore things. Each user should feel that MyNavy is there to serve them rather than it being a service itself. That means showing it exclusivity and also showing the benefits of any action that they take. So like I said, these three core pillars remain consistent across everything we do. We dial them up, we dial them down as we need to, but we ask the team to remember them at all times. Whatever new service we're developing, however small a feature might be, we've always got to remember about these three core pillars because they're the thing that need to remain consistent across our brand. On top of that, we also came up with a set of experience principles. Now these help guide the form and the function of MyNavy itself. Again, all built on the same foundations. So as I said, everything we do needs to be based on our core pillars, and that's exactly what we did with the core experience principles that we've created. There are guidelines, the guidelines that we've committed to for our product development. They're integral to everything we do, and they should be used religiously across the entire team. That means flowing through everything, whether it's a piece of strategy work or delivery of the smallest piece of development work, all driven to ultimately create the best user experience possible. So I'll talk through each of them one by one. The first is joyful utility. This is about simple, clean, and efficient. So everything has a purpose, with how it works always more important than how it looks. So no user's time is wasted. The experience is intuitive, and each element has a rationale that can be clearly articulated. The second is about seamless real-world integration. So MyNavy is a digital tool, but it has real impact on the physical experience. We need to make sure that every action is rooting and helping users improve their lives outside of the app itself. Show me you know me. This is the first one under personalization. MyNavy evolves with the individual. There's a personal connection between the app and the user. We show that in all the details, from making imagery and the language reflecting their circumstances to only presenting opportunities that are relevant to them. The second one under personalization is about always learning. So we never ask the same questions twice. This is really, really important for us. The user doesn't want to repeat steps. So we gain information subtly. All integrated and progressive data capture means that we never compromise on the experience itself. And in empowerment, our final two, no dead ends. So we encourage exploration and discovery, which means we make sure there's always a next step or an action available. Each user can make the best of their decisions based on the path that they want to take. And our final one is about every action has a reaction. The app is there to serve the employee, not the Royal Navy. So users can see that their interactions are acknowledged and they have the power to action and amend details, and progress is transparent. So again, building on those core foundations of the brand, these are the principles that the team work with on a daily basis. Next, I wanted to give you an idea of the development story that MyNavy has been on and how the product has progressed over time. Like I said, born out of the research, an MVP first went live. The idea was to get the product in users' hands, to test it and see how well it was received. After seeing that it was a success and it was here to stay, then some initial development took place. But in March 2020, things progressed pretty rapidly. Obviously, that was the time when we were hit with COVID. COVID reporting was obviously really important at that time, and that was built into the tool itself. So personnel could go into the tool to report their COVID status. Actually, what happened from that tool itself, the development was very quick, and it actually gave the best picture around COVID in the entire public sector. After the success of that, it was seen by the RAF, and the RAF were interested to come on board and wanted a version of the product themselves. So in June of 2020, That is the time that MyRAF was created. After that, as we got into 21, there were some significant developments that took place to scale the product and also to add new features to it. One of those in particular was the online clothing store. The idea here was to take away the day-to-day hassle for people when they go to a store, they'd ask to get a piece of uniform, they'd turn up only to be told it wasn't available in their size or wasn't in stock. So what we created was a click and collect service so people could see what items were in stock and available for them. They could collect them from a variety of stores across the country. That was a significant change. Also, made a big change within the RAF because it was mandated that was the only way to get uniform. In January 2022, the product was also scaled, and that was in terms of its audience. So originally it was only for serving personnel, but in Jan 2022, the product became available to the whole of the Navy. So that includes civil servants, the Royal Fleet Auxiliary. This meant between the Navy and the RAF, the user base had gone up now to 80,000. As we then went into continued development from January until where we are today, we've seen release of new products every 6 weeks or so, and these range from things like healthcare, career management. We've integrated a feedback tool, and also development of resources and libraries for progressing people's skills and interests. Also, there's now a course booking tool, taking away that hassle and making it much easier for people to go in and do those simple little interactions. And there are plans for the product to grow even further. Like I mentioned at the beginning, the product is a progressive web app at the moment. There's plans in February next year to launch a React Native version of the product itself for MyNavy and for MyRAF. Once this happens, MyNavy will be the first native application developed for the Navy. So as you can see, we started off with an MVP, started off based on research, and there have been some key moments that have helped accelerate the product at different times. Now we'll move into a continuous development model. So next I wanted to talk a little bit about the approach that we have when we develop MyNavy. One of the things that's incredibly important to us is to make sure that everything we do is user-centered. At Great State, we're passionate about user-centered design. And there are several principles that we have that are important to us to help deliver UCD. But on MyNavy, we wanted to pull out the ones that we thought were particularly pertinent for this delivery. Those are having a clearly defined purpose, having evidence-based approach, using agility, and pushing boundaries. And I'll talk through each of them one by one, just to give you a sense of what they actually mean to us. So clearly defined purpose. A clearly defined purpose for us is all about bringing focus to our work and also enables the team to align on key decisions. So a clear purpose means that we can operate as a single team, but we can also maintain the autonomy needed to work quickly. I mentioned earlier on there are lots of stakeholders we have to work with, and often that means contrasting opinions. So having a strong purpose agreed by everyone up front really helps us navigate that. If we're having conversations with people and they're asking for something, we can then challenge to see if they're aligned to that purpose. Of course, having someone like Mogsy, who's a very well-informed military product owner, massively helps us here to have those conversations internally. We can be asking the questions. Is this empowering users? Does this align to our core objectives? Is this helping us achieve the things that we set out to achieve originally? The second of these is all about having an evidence-based approach. And this is incredibly important to us. Essentially, user-centered design should do exactly what it says on the tin. It should be user-centered. That means that we gather our evidence throughout every stage of the process, through discovery, through design, and through build phases. And we do that to inform all of our decision making and validate our approaches. Beyond launch as well, we'll also continue to gather evidence. This means that we can improve over time, bit by bit. Like I said, for context, we deliver a huge number of different services and have to work within a complex organisation. This means there are times when we're asked to do things by the organisation. What's important for us, those things could have huge organisational benefit. What we need to make sure we do is make sure it aligns with what the users are looking for as well. So when there's an organisational drive behind development of a service, we'll always make sure that we test it, we get user feedback, we get the insight from users to understand that it's delivering the things that they need to. The third of these is all about agility. This to us is getting to market quickly and then learning from real users. So continuous delivery. The principle here is all about working software over comprehensive documentation. So we believe in working at pace, but delivering the right level of documentation to support those around us. If we work in this way, we're really able to get to market faster and then receive real feedback from users in a real environment, which we find is the best way to do things. Of course, it's really important to remember that we have to follow a set of processes within the MOD environment, and that's of course incredibly important and necessary in certain situations, whether those are things around security, accreditation, and aligning to the wider policies within Navy Digital. But of course, we just need to make sure that those things don't hinder us. It's all about the right level of governance. I talked earlier a little bit about the uniform click and collect service. That was a service that was delivered within 12 weeks. So it does show that you can easily deliver in an agile way. Our fourth and final principle for UCD is all about pushing boundaries. The expectations that users have aren't the same as the expectations of the industry. Our work is there to close that digital expectation gap between what users expect and what organisations are actually delivering. We spent a lot of time working with existing process. If we had simply just taken these and digitised them, there would have still been a gap. So instead, we look at how we align this with people's wider digital experiences and try to create a step change, meaning that we close that gap to the expectations that users have, constantly pushing boundaries and challenging one another to help us deliver more. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about how we deliver MyNavy and the model that we go through to be able to deliver for our users. I mentioned earlier on that everything is user-centred, and that's really incredibly important for us. What we do is we have a phased approach, and this is all based on GDS principles. This is designed to deliver user-centred work at pace. What we've done is we've taken the core GDS principles and applied them in a way that really works well for the Navy. So we go through a process of discovery, which is all where we do our user research to identify and validate the requirements, understand the problems, and then work out what to prioritise for the next phase of work. Then we move into exploration. This is all about ideation and creation of concepts that we can test with our users. Also, we then create a backlog of user stories that are prioritised, ready for build. And then finally, we move into our iterative development, and that's where we also continue to test our features. As I say, throughout that whole process, we have collaboration and user focus. So users are engaged at every stage of that cycle to ensure that the solutions that we develop and the hypotheses that we come up meet their need. Then we go into beta/live. So this is release of the product to a controlled and small group. This is where we'll measure performance and we'll get learnings that can help us optimize the product before we push it live to all of our wider audience groups. Then what we do is we move into what we call our continuous cycle of product development once we're into that live work stream. What we're doing here is we are looking to continue, iterate, enhance the existing products and services through a process of continual development, which is all based on user insight. Probably bored of hearing me talk about users at the moment, but they are at the centre of everything we do. Our insight can come from multiple sources as well. So that could be analytics data, it could be a feature called Have Your Say that we've built into the app. It's a mechanism for people to give us feedback. It could be through conversations and interactions that Moxie has through its network, but also from our quarterly user testing. But as you can see, everything revolves around our users, identifying and understanding their needs, and exploring solutions and testing them with them, and then constantly refining them. We measure the impact and make sure they are effective as possible. This means that we're in a continuous loop that never stops. Our approach to this is that our work is never done. We get something live and it's there for us to constantly build on. Next, I want to talk a little bit more about the impact that we've had with MyNavy. I mentioned earlier that across MyNavy and MyRAF, we are now serving to 80,000 personnel. What we found is that 72% of users from the Royal Navy are using the app on a regular basis. This is incredibly important to us to make sure that we get widespread use and adoption across the Navy. We're also seeing that the app is being used in many different countries around the world. I mentioned earlier on that the Navy has a dispersed workforce. What this shows us from the stats is that it's now being used in 27 countries around the world. We've also found as well that a huge majority of our audience are accessing MyNavy through their smartphone. We know that users don't have access to regular computers, and we've created MyNavy so it can be accessed by anyone's individual personal device. And now we know that so many people are accessing and using MyNavy in that way, it makes sure that everything we do is mobile first. But ultimately, the feedback that's most important is that we're allowing users to feel more valued and more empowered, which means that ultimately they have a happier and healthier time in the Navy and are going to stay in the service for longer. One of the ways we've been able to make sure that the engagement has been good is by the range of development work that we've been able to do. So working at pace and delivering features, enhancing those features, and also new services to users has been incredibly important to get the levels of engagement that we've seen. This means improvements to our dashboard service, so greater clarity around the announcements we give, the click and collect uniform service. We've created the Leadership Centre of Excellence to allow people to be able to access information, be able to help progress their career. They can now report their sickness and absence in a much easier way. We've taken the hassle out of booking courses. All these things make a difference over time. I also wanted to pull out some of the feedback we've had from users specifically from that Have Your Say feature that I mentioned. It's been really important for us to see this feedback because it validates the way that we're working and also the things that we're trying to achieve. Supporting personnel, if you remember from the research, was incredibly important for us. It was one of the key things that we learned. This quote sums it up really well. I've been struggling and needed help. Having access to the information and device through MyNavy helped give me the support I need. This is all about us giving the right information to users in an easy way for them to access it and giving the right type of information at the right time. A big part of our job is also about making lives easier for people. If you remember, one of our core principles was all about utility, and that was also driven by efficiency, for users to be able to get in there and do the things they needed to do quickly. This has been a real step change in some of the things that we developed, like the uniform click and collect service, allowing us to save people the time and the effort they needed. Also an example here of people being able to see their vaccination status and dental records easily on the phone, just freeing them up time and allowing them to better manage their time so they can spend it on other things. And finally, without, like I also mentioned, to help transform the Navy. This is about making sure the new generation of people who join the Navy have the tools that they need. There's higher expectations than ever before for employees to have the tools they need to be able to do their jobs effectively. And MyNavy helps to do that. You can see from this feedback that users are impressed by the way that an organisation like the Navy has created a tool that can be used in this way. In the next section, I just wanted to sum up some of the learnings that we've had. I thought it would be interesting to reflect back on some of the things that we've learned in our time working on MyNavy. They might be relevant examples here that can be used for others. The first of these is that working with public sector organisations doesn't have to be a slow process. I think this is the myth that needs to be dispelled. It's always thought to be the case that due to the strict governance and lots of bureaucracy within the public sector, that it means that that agency partners like us come to mirror some of that. When we came to MyNavy, our aim was to prove value really quickly. And we found if you've got a client, in this case Moxie, who's willing to do things a little bit differently and challenge people, you've also got a team that thinks in the same way, there's no reason that why you can't deliver quickly within the government environment. This is especially important for us because we have a client who's empowered. Moxie is a uniformed product owner who's sitting right at the heart of the organisation, and that makes an incredible difference to us. The other thing that's been really important for us is the collaborative approach. We have first-hand access to people who have got that lived experience, so serving personnel who are there within the Navy. And also we're working with personnel in the Navy who are driven to deliver change, but also they're equipped with the knowledge to do things quickly and work at pace. The second thing that we've learned, and personally as we've been on this journey with MyNavy, is that you shouldn't just deliver things for the sake of it. And it sounds like a strange thing, but sometimes that mentality does exist, particularly when hierarchy within an organisation is requesting everything. To me, everyone talks about being user-centred, but most of the time they're actually not. Organisational objectives and hierarchy quite often get in the way. Like I mentioned about Moxie, we have a product owner here who understands the value of being user-centred, and that has been incredibly important for us to have this approach. Everything we do on MyNavy has been involved talking to users. Like I said, we built that Have Your Say feature. We're constantly getting feedback. People are identifying problems that we didn't know existed, suggesting enhancements to its features and services that we may not have even thought about, and they're even recommended new features and functions that we might not even identified. All of this means we're constantly improving the service that benefits the users. So everything that we deliver has value. The third of these is all about teams working better when they set goals together. I talked earlier on about the purpose and the core pillars that we have in place that everyone's aligned to. But one of our philosophies is that everyone who works on MyNavy, with the Navy, are all part of the same team. And that's incredibly important for us. We set the foundations for this when we started on this. We went back to the reasons why MyNavy exists, and as a team we co-created this new vision and the set of values that we have. This really helped bring the team much closer together, because now everyone's working towards the same things. It's all been co-created, and we've done it in an environment where people feel they can challenge each other against those core principles that exist. All done in a positive way to ultimately help deliver a better product. Everyone's bought into that vision, and everyone holds everyone else accountable for not letting that vision be watered down. The fourth of these is that we're not just here to improve MyNavy, we're also here to help the Navy more widely as well. The whole point about MyNavy is recognising the value of its people, and that's true for our team as well. The Navy recognises that they're behind in where they need to be with digital, and that means they need to understand that we're just not there to deliver a thing for them, we're also there to help train their people as well. We're there to mentor them, give them better skills that they can then take back to the Navy and they can use them in other areas of what they do. That means our success shouldn't just be judged on what we're delivering for the people who use the app, but also whether we've helped them, the people who work with us, to improve them, give them new experiences and leave them with new skills that they can take back into other roles within the Navy. And the final one is that if you work on something that makes a difference to people, it also makes a difference to you as well. So as much as I've loved all the other work that I've done in my career, I feel like MyNavy is different. It makes you care more. We're talking to personnel all the time. We've had feedback from people who were struggling, saying they found things that they needed through MyNavy. And when you hear that from someone directly, you get that sense of actually doing some genuinely rewarding work. The sort of work that most people, I don't think, get a chance to do. So with MyNavy, we're building a tool that's essential for people's lives. And what I've realised when I've worked on this is that if you have a team that understand the significance of what they're doing, and when they really care, the quality of your work you can do together, the speed that you can do it, and the impact you can have will really make a difference. So for me, these are just some of the things that I've learned working on MyNavy that I thought would be worth reflecting on. And finally, just to sum this up, I wanted to talk a little bit about the future and what this means for MyNavy. I mentioned that the product is widely adopted across the Navy. It's a tool that's here to stay, and it's a tool that has high prominence in the Navy and the RAF. It's a tool that people are behind. People have backed it for the future. They see the benefit it brings. Our vision is to make sure that this becomes the essential tool that ultimately enhances the Royal Navy experience and empowers personnel to take control of their future. It's really important that we have this vision there in front of us so that everyone can strive towards it. There'll be new features added. Like I said, we're going to create a native version of the app. Will be the first one for the Navy, and that will go live in February next year. We're always looking for those next big things that align to help us get us closer towards this vision. That brings us to the end of the presentation, so hopefully you've enjoyed this. Of course, more than happy to share more information if you'd like to know more. Please get in touch. Don't feel free to reach out. Here's my email address, and I hope it's been useful. Apologies again from Mogsy that he couldn't make it. He would love to be here today to take us through this journey. But hopefully there's some useful insight and some useful things that you can take away from this and maybe be inspired by some of the other things that you might be able to achieve across the work that you do. So thank you for your time today, and good luck with everything you do. Thank you.